Welcome to Workers Rock, a podcast that explores this truth that we have the power to change the culture of employment across the globe. I'm Emerette Miller, the host of Workers Rock. Workers Rock is part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network. All right, we're here with Lennon Ying-Dah Wong from Taiwan. We're talking about migrant work in Taiwan. Thank you so much, Lennon. Lennon is the director of the Department of Policies on Migrant Workers for Serve the People Association of Taiwan. How are you, Lennon?
Hi, I'm Maraid and all the listeners. I'm very honored to be here. Yes, thanks.
Thank you so much for joining Workers Rock today. It is 10 p.m. my time. What time is it there?
It's about 10, about the same time, about 12 hours. It's daytime, so it's May 1 here in Taiwan.
Oh, and it's April here, so that's interesting. You're traveling back in time talking to me, and I'm looking
Yeah.
forward. So, is it a federal holiday or a work holiday in
Yeah, May
Taiwan?
1, well, it's a national holiday, but for workers. But so like national, so government employees or teachers, they are not considered as labor here in Taiwan. So it's a
Ah,
holiday for workers, but not for non-workers.
oh, that's awesome. So here we don't have May Day off, but
Mm-mm,
we do celebrate it. Workers do celebrate May 1st. We have
mm-mm,
something called Labor Day
mm.
in September,
Yeah,
but
I
I
know.
think that's great.
Mm.
So, we have listeners from all over the world. I'd like to start with a little bit about Taiwan to get
Sure.
into the topic at hand.
Right.
So, can you tell me about the population of Taiwan and the largest industries that you have there on the island?
Right. The, well, now we have around more than 23 million because the population has been declined a little bit. Before it's 24. So you can consider it as a small state as US.
Hmm.
And I think nowadays we have a lot of different industries. I didn't catch the profile yet, but I think the most popular industry in Taiwan, considering on the manufacturing, might be high tech or semiconductors. That'll be very very powerful, and of course the service industry is also very big. Agriculture is relatively small and fishing also. So a bigger population will be in the service industry, but
Hmm.
manufacturing is still quite big. And IT, semiconductors is very important in the world. Yeah.
Ah, what are some of the largest companies that have they have their manufacturing plants there?
Well, yes, like one of some of the most famous Taiwanese brands like TSMC, which has a company in Arizona, I think,
Hmm.
and Foxconn. They claim to invest in US, but I think it didn't come out. And some computers like Asus computer and HTC, which has been a very famous brand for cell phone. These are
Hmm.
some of the more famous brands from Taiwan.
Right. Okay. So tell me, let's give some perspective here. What's the
Mhm.
average rent in US dollars in Taiwan per month for like a one bedroom apartment?
Well, now the exchange rate is about one US dollar to 32. You can say around 32 NT dollars.
Hmm.
So, oh, I'm sorry. Okay, yeah, okay. So like, well, in Taipei and I mean, in downtown and suburb, it would be quite different. I live in New Taipei. It's a suburb city out of Taipei. So Taipei is the capital, so it's the highest. So New
Mm.
Taipei, and I'm in the fringe, the outskirt of New Taipei. So it's relatively cheaper. So my family, we have a family of three. We have a three-bedroom house. I rent
Hmm.
in the seventh floor building with elevator. Now it's 13,000 NT. So it's already really quite cheap here. Yeah, you cannot get this price now.
Now, American dollars, what would that be about?
Okay, let me have a very quick calculation. I'm sorry. I'll check my cell phone. My math is
Okay.
quite quite bad. So let's see. 13,000 NT will be like roughly like 400. You can say like
Okay, that's
400
not
US
bad.
dollars.
That
Mm-hmm.
for us, that's not bad.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to just give some perspective because I wanted to know a little bit about the minimum wage
Okay.
for someone who perhaps is born in Taiwan, right? And is
Yeah.
working in Taiwan. What's the minimum wage for a
Right.
national?
It's adjusted like every year. So this year in 2024, it should be, if I remember correctly, it should be 27,400 NT. So that would be around 840 US dollars
Per month?
per month. Yeah, that's for per month. If it's for part timers, it's like 100 plus NT. So, but sorry, I didn't get a very precise number now, but it should.
Around. So like you if your rent is 400 and you make 800, that's about
Mhm,
what minimum wage is, something
mhm.
like that.
Right,
Okay.
right, right.
So here we get paid by the hour
If
here
have
in New York.
for our what is that the part timers like those in convenience store is paid by the hour. So we have a different rate. It's 140 NT, so it's around 4.3 US dollar. It's quite low,
Oh, per hour. So okay, now we
yeah,
got to it. So about $4 an hour minimum
something like
wage.
that. Yes, very very low.
Okay. That's gonna be our baseline there.
Mm-mm,
Okay.
mm-mm.
So now we're talking about migrant workers,
Right.
those who are coming from countries looking for work, not really knowing what they'd face. Why do they
Mm-mm.
come to Taiwan?
Yeah, so most of them they have their family needs. In those, we have a very strict management on migrant workers. So it's totally regulated by the government. They only allow to recruit workers from now it's four countries. The biggest is Vietnam. Sorry, Indonesia, and then Vietnam, Philippines, and Thailand. Most of them, of course, you can see that they are relatively economically lower than Taiwan,
Hmm.
and maybe many of the workers they cannot have a decent job at home, so they have to support their families, and so um, and some of the countries, especially like well, actually all of the countries, they have a long tradition of going out to work, going abroad to work. So many
Right.
workers they have a relatively smaller choices. So going abroad would be one of the best option for them to support their family.
So I know I Andy Hall mentioned the recruitment fees.
Yes,
It seems to be the same thing in Taiwan. Is that it's almost like a copy? Like they come, they pay these recruitment fees,
right.
and then they don't find good work. That the conditions are harsh. Tell me more.
Yeah, well, it's yes, they have to pay a lot of money. Yeah, so frankly, they have to pay a recruitment fee, the placement fee. Okay, well, there might be different names, but you can imagine that they will go to an agency in a home country
Hmm.
for a big number of placement fee, and
Right.
then um, and also plus a lot of other fees. They have to pay a lot of fees for themselves, like medical checkup, the paperworks, a lot of paperworks, transportation, and they might need to stay in the capital city a few days or some time to wait for the result or join the training center, okay, before
Hmm.
they come to Taiwan. And then okay, so everything they need to pay, and even the air ticket themselves, okay, and then they come
Mm.
another medical, another fee, and also the documentation here they pay again, and then they have to pay to the locals as a broker too. It's just called a service fee. It's monthly, so well,
Hmm.
it's quite big. I can give you a number. For the first 3 years, they have to pay the local brokers in Taiwan for 60,000 NT. That would be 1,840 US dollar, something like that.
Per year.
Uh, that's just 3 years, and the placement
Oh.
fee they pay abroad is very different from country to country, from different industry and even different company. So relatively, the Filipinos they pay a little bit lower, but it will still be like 40 to 60,000 NT, and
Hmm.
Indonesian higher, and Vietnamese is the highest. I heard that it could be as high as maybe 6,000 or more US dollars. So
Hmm.
they have to pay a long time to pay back the loan.
So, what happens when they get to Taiwan? Like now, they've passed all of that, they've trained, they've paid the fees, they
Mm-mm.
flew on the plane, they
Yeah.
landed. Now what?
Well, yeah, but it's a little bit different by industry. Okay, for example, we have a big amount of caregivers at home,
Mhm.
a very small number of domestic helper. For this sector, Taiwanese government require for some training, so they will have some training for a few weeks or even a few months, and yeah, for others it's not really strictly required for training, so so for example the fishermen, they might wait for a shorter time. They might just register and come here. Okay, so
Mhm.
they will be brought from the airport. There will be a very brief seminar, and well, usually there will be a uh, like pre-departure seminar in the home country, but it
Right.
depends. Like in the Philippines, it's required, but
Mhm.
that's very simple, very brief. Almost nothing will be mentioned about their rights. So they will be brought to
Mm.
Taiwan where they don't know the law, they don't know the language, and
Mm.
weather is usually very different. So sorry for about the noise. There are some fireworks outside. Sorry.
Oh no! Is it because of May Day? Is it
Well,
because of the holiday?
no, that's a temple. There's a rally at the temple, like a pilgrimage.
I love
Yeah,
it. That's okay. It's just
it's interesting.
background music.
Yeah,
That's cool.
it's really like a pilgrimage team. So they will pass by as a team, whole team. They will pass by here.
Wow,
Like
do they do that every day or
yeah, it's a we call it local belief. It's a mixture of Buddhism and Taoism. So each temple, each god, they will have their own pilgrimage.
wow. And so where do they walk from temple to temple or
No, they will have their own territory. It's like you can imagine it as a police precinct. So each god they have their own small territory. So the pilgrimage is like walking around his or her territory to
um
his followers. Yeah,
oh, that's
it's
really
like that.
neat. Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay. Okay. They
All
just
right.
passed by.
Awesome. What
Yeah.
were we seeing? Okay. When they wouldn't know the laws and they wouldn't know the language.
Yeah, in some countries they had some basic training for the language, like Indonesia they had a little bit longer, but a new language is very hard, and Chinese is totally different from any of the languages. Well, maybe a little bit similar to Vietnamese, but for all the other three languages totally different. So it's very hard for them to learn. So even for a few weeks it doesn't help too much. So basically, when they arrive in Taiwan, they don't know the language, they don't know anything about the law, they don't really know about the weather, and they don't know how will face them, what will face them. So anyway, they will be picked up by the broker or the car company, and they will be put in a room for one day, and then
Mhm.
the second day they will be picked up to have the medical checkup. Then they will be sent to the employer's house or the factory to start their work. And usually there's no orientation for them, or even there is very brief. So they will just start their work. And usually the only translator they would have is the one from the agency. I mean the local agency. So usually there are two agencies to work together. The placement fee I mentioned, they paid at the home country. A big sum of it will be transferred to the agency in Taiwan.
Mhm.
And in Taiwan, it's also a different, I mean, the practice of the agency or the recruitment is also different by industry. For example, the caregivers, if you hire a caregiver, you need to pay, I mean, the employer needs to pay some fees to the broker. But
Mhm.
if you own a company, if you hire many workers for manufacturing,
Mhm.
usually you don't need to pay anything to the broker. On the contrary, the broker will bribe you. They will pay you kickbacks by the
Right.
by in the number of the person of the worker. So like for example, each worker you hire, they will give you maybe 30,000 NT. So
Hmm.
if you have 100, then they will pay you 100. No, you can just times 100. So that's a lot of money. And the
Right.
brokers will also manage the dormitory for the factory, and that's how it works.
So they live on premises or close by, owned by the employer?
Well, it depends again. Sometimes the dormitory, I mean, for the factory, the dormitory is inside or maybe just outside the company, and sometimes it's a little bit different distance. And the dormitory is usually run by the agency. So if it's far from the company, they might need to have a transportation. Sometimes a bus, sometimes they have to ride their own motorcycle or bicycle to the factory. And if they are in the house, they will usually they have to stay in the employer's house. And if they are fishermen, they will work and also live on the fishing vessels they work. It's quite different.
Now, Serve the People Association is also a shelter for migrant workers. Tell me about
Yes.
that.
Yeah, since 10 years ago, we started the shelter. We call it the service center and shelter for migrant workers. So now we have three shelters for Vietnamese, Indonesian, and Filipino workers, separate respectively. So we have three sets of staff who can speak their language. So
Mhm.
usually we get their complaints we through social media usually. So we will have open up a chat with them to because it'll be much easier. It's not it's they cannot always come out. So we will have a chat with them, and we will have a written petition, ask them to populate their complaints, and then there is a government's hotline. They have bilingual speakers, so actually all of the migrants they can call themselves, but sometimes they feel that this number, the people in the numbers, they will discourage them, or
Right.
sometimes, sad to say, will give them some wrong information. So if we do it, we will complain to the call center and we will follow up because the cases will be forwarded to the city governments where they live. And so we will follow up to the labor office in each city or county and to continue. Usually they might have a mediation meeting in that city or county. So we will go there with the worker to join the meeting.
Okay. So, couple questions. How
Mm.
much do they pay the shelter, or is it
I don't know.
free for them?
It's free. Well, yeah. If the worker is approved by the government to stay in the shelter, it's totally. We will have some subsidy from the government.
Oh, that's
Sometimes
nice.
sometimes there's none. In some cases, the governments think there's no need for the sheltering. So there's no subsidy, but we still keep them. So anyway, for anyone, whether or not or if there's a subsidy, the workers don't need to pay any single dollar to us. It's totally free.
Okay. Here, migrant workers, they work a lot in the apple industry here in New York
Hmm.
State, in
Hmm.
dairy, and they do a lot of the vegetable farming.
Okay.
They get minimum wage now, just
Hmm.
like anyone else does. So they are
Yeah.
paid the same minimum wage. Now, what, how are the migrant workers? Tell me more about the conditions and tell me more about, you know, are there unions for migrant
Yeah, there are
workers?
some. Okay, so as maybe by industry, for there are two parts of the migrant workers who are excluded from the Labor Standard Act. The domestic workers, okay, including the caregivers in the house. There are more than 200,000 of them, and also so their salary is much lower. And another part is the distant water fishermen. They have another employment system and also another government agency in charge of their labor works. They also have a much lower salary, and so these two parts they don't have protection at all. Actually, you can say that there's no labor law, so no working hour or yeah, no working hour regulation. And but the others, like the
Mhm.
factory workers, the agricultural workers, and also those in the coastal fishing, they have the minimum wage. So the working condition is different by industry. So the two most vulnerable sectors will be the domestic workers and the fishermen, distant water fishermen. The domestic caregivers especially is quite difficult. Usually they don't have their own rooms. They have to stay in the same room with the patient, because what is different here from many other countries is they work as caregivers most of the time. So there's a patient. So their main job should be taking care of the patient instead of the houseworks. But at the same time, they will be required for most of the housework usually. So other than taking care of everything for the patient, they also have to cook for everyone, wash the clothes for everyone, clean every corner in the house sometimes. So it's quite hard. It's super hard. It's very abusive,
Mm.
and they're vulnerable. They don't, because they don't have their room, so anyone can approach to them. So physical violence and gender based violence is quite rampant to them. These take water fishermen also, yeah.
Awful.
And but you for in terms of union, there are some unions, but very few. There are a few unions for the migrant fishermen. One is organized by the Indonesian fishermen themselves. It's alliance called FOSPI. It's in the south. And for the caregivers,
Mhm.
there are two major unions. One is the DCU, or Domestic Caregivers Union, and the National Domestic Workers Union. We are supporting this one. And for the factory workers, there is a association. It's Factory Workers Association in Taiwan, or FWAT. We support this Filipino factory workers, and there's another Indonesian workers union like that. And lastly, we formed two company-based union last year. They are in a company called ASKEY, ASKEY. That's a subsidiary of ASUS Computer. So there are two unions there in the factory. Yeah.
Wow. So, Serve the People Association helps workers to
Yes.
unionize
Yes. Actually,
also?
this is one of our main job, even for the local Taiwanese. In the past almost 20 years, we organized quite a lot of unions. Some of them are dead, but some of them are
Ah,
still survived. Yeah.
what is the union victory that you're most proud of recently for at period in Taiwan?
Well,
Like,
well, yeah. So last year we almost had a strike for the newly established union. They had a lot of problems, but just make it very brief. Very brief. They were demanded this factory. They have two factories anyway. The ASCII. In one factory, they moved to a new dormitory with a much higher electricity bill, and just 2 months later, the company told them, well, we don't have so much order here, so there's no overtime. So if you want to earn more, you can transfer to other companies. Well, this is very special because usually the companies, they cherish their
oh,
quota. The quota is given by the government. So usually they don't like their workers to
mhm.
transfer. But very surprisingly, this company is almost like encouraging the workers to transfer. So many workers, they try to transfer because they want to get more money. But before they left, they got a note of unpaid money from the broker, which told them, well, you have a lot of money you didn't pay yet, including the monthly service fee and also the electricity bill.
Oh
They have to
no.
pay like 2,000 NT per averagely per person per month. 2,000 is like, well, what is that? I give you the total number. Anyway, many workers, they have to pay 20,000 NT. That's like 613 US dollars before they leave.
That's more
Yeah,
than
that's
rent.
crazy.
Yeah. So,
So there's a good complaint. Yeah.
tell me now, we talked about a Taiwanese minimum wage about
That's a per
$4.
hour.
What does
hmm
Yeah, what does the average migrant worker make per hour?
well, if they're in a factory, they have the minimum wage. Yeah, they have the minimum wage.
Oh, they
So
would
they have
make it.
they have the 27,400 minimum wage, but how much they can really get, it's really tricky. If there's no overtime, well, it's very hard for them because that's the top salary they can have to 27,000 400, yeah, NT,
Oh.
but they will be deducted a lot. They have to pay the dorm and foods for like usually it's for like 4,000 NT, and many there are sometimes others too, the service fee also, and
Mm.
other fees. So sometimes it could be much lower than that if there's no overtime. So for the factory workers, if It's very important for them to have more overtime so they can get a little bit more.
What do you want to see happen? What is Serve the People Association hoping that their work will impact?
Well, in the long run, we hope the highest standard will be, we hope to have equal rights for the migrant workers, and even equal access for them to be citizens of Taiwan. Because now the system is
Mm,
totally very abusive and full of discrimination. The Taiwan government treat the migrant
mhm,
workers totally different from immigrants. It's almost impossible for them to become immigrant. Their contract is always 3 years. So they after 3 years, it's on the employer's favor whether they can continue or not. If not, they have to go home or try to
mhm,
find another job. So each time 3 years, 3 years. It's always temporary, and there is a cap for 12 years. Usually they can work in Taiwan for only 12 years. The house workers, they can be extended for another 2 years if the employer is willing. And now there is a skilled workers
mhm,
program but that's always controlled by the employer. After 6 years of service, and if their salary is higher with some language and skill certificate, the employer can apply for the workers to have a more stable status. But that's not guaranteed. So what we want the equal rights for the migrant workers, and totally elimination of all the forced labor practices. If we see the forced labor indicator by ILO, the 11 ones, the migrant workers, they have all in Taiwan. So actually, all of them, they are the victims of forced labor or human
mm,
trafficking. It's a very long way to go. And how to do it? We believe unionization will be a very big power. So we hope to build
right.
unions for migrant workers for more. But at the same time, the other governments and the brands can help a lot if they are willing to do. We know that there is an ongoing trade talk between U.S. and Taiwan. It's called the 21st century trade initiative. So so the U.S. government want to put the forced labor regulation to avoid any products
Right.
from forced labor to be imported or exported. But unfortunately, the Taiwanese government is trying to refuse it. So actually they are now
Mhm.
now at this moment they are talking in Taipei. So we hope the U.S. government can be stern on that, and this will be passed. At the same time, the forced labor is already banned in Europe. I mean, they just passed the law last week, and they can ban the products, and also the due diligence
The
yes,
due diligence.
directive is
Yes,
passed
yes.
in Europe, and there might be a harder law on that. So we hope all the relevant
Okay.
laws can have some consequences and impact. So the employers and brokers in Taiwan, they have to do some change, otherwise they cannot export their products anymore.
Tell me about there were two
Hmm.
entertainers that you've been fighting for. There are two entertainers that you've been fighting for that are from Kenya. Tell me more
Yeah,
about
well,
this.
yes, we just got this news last month, and quite surprising because it's the first time we got the complaints from so-called white collar migrant workers. Most of the time, what we have discussed until now, all of them are so-called blue collar workers. It's not the official term, but we know they are
Mhm,
blue collar. They do the so-called maybe lower skill jobs. I don't really think that's low skill, but that's a typical image. And there are other migrants, they
mhm,
come to work as teachers, professors, athletes, performers, musicians, and many other kinds. So the government also allow them to come to work, but with a very different standards. If they are considered as professional or with some special skills, they will have a much higher salary. But others, they will have the same salary within that industry. So the two,
right.
they were hired as performers. Actually, they were for performers, like circus or any kind of a performance on the stage. So they were hired with some other Kenyans to Taiwan. So they were supposed, but okay, they were promised to have the salary of 550 US dollars, but they were told the 50 of them, that's US dollars, would be given to the recruiter who recruited them from Kenya. So they will have 500 NT, which is super low in Taiwan. That's much lower than the minimum wage we just mentioned. It should be 800 plus, right? So that's and they sign another contract in Taiwan. It says that their salary is 15,000, but actually, the first salary they signed, which was given to the Taiwan government, is a minimum wage. So actually, they were told, and they signed multiple contracts, which they don't really understand. The first one is only in Chinese,
Hmm.
and when they were taken to Taiwan, they were driven to the place to the farm, and they were told that, well, there's no programs now because that's still in within the COVID-19 period. That was 2 years ago, so there's no
Right.
circus, no performance. So you just work in the farm. So they do the farm works. So they plant. Yeah,
No, Lennon,
yeah, they
Lennon,
plant. It really
no.
it's very very harsh, very hard farm works. I'm not saying that farm work is dirty, but they were not supposed to do that. So that's not right. And they were under the sun every day to do very harsh farm works with chemical fertilizers. So one of them got poison in
What?
the eye, so he was temporarily blind, and he got allergy on his one of his feet, and then they were transferred to a recycle company. So they have to collect the garbage and to put them in different places, and they work with a lot of dust and a lot of different garbage. They recycle the garbage, and so one of them they complained to the government. So the local labor office in the southern Taiwan, they went to check, but surprisingly, they didn't say anything, and they said, well, they didn't find anything illegal. So the employer was angry, so they fired them.
But they came to
Performers,
be
yes, yes,
entertainers, and then they were tricked into
farmers,
being
yeah, yeah.
farm labor. Right. So where are
Well,
they
yeah, they are.
now?
Two of them, the two who complained, they are in our shelter now. So sometimes, occasionally, they were taken to do some circus work, some performance for performing works, and then so after they were fired, they were taken to northern Taiwan. So they were sent to another farm. They were supposedly to be sent home, but they begged the broker, so the broker put them in another farm with similar condition. They don't have work also, and they said, well, this is a mercy for you, so there's no salary at all. They don't even have the small salary. And on the yeah,
Lennon,
yeah,
that's
it is.
slavery.
It is.
That's
And
slavery.
the broker said, okay, okay, I will lend you some money so you can send home. So after 3 months, they owed a lot of money to the broker because they need to send home. So they don't have salary, and they have a loan to the broker. It's really crazy. They have how much is that? They have 674 US dollars loan to the broker. So anyway, one of their friends complained to us, so we reported to the government, so they were allowed to come, and they were already taken as the victim of human trafficking by the legal enforcement officers. So the whole case will be taken as a criminal case. It's still ongoing. Yeah,
Oh, wow. How many more of them are there out there? You have two
yeah.
in who
Well,
are with you
yeah,
in your
there are
shelter
two
now?
Kenyans in our shelter. I know there are more. They as because those who came with them, they are still in Taiwan, most of them. And after they came here, there were another patch of them who just arrived not long ago. So they do the same or similar works like them. They do the farm works, and occasionally they do some entertaining performing works.
So this is now becoming widespread, you
It's
think? That this is something you've just discovered that perhaps there's dozens of people like this
maybe.
affected
Yeah,
or
it seems
hundreds?
to be a new model of abuse, human trafficking, and forced labor. Because I just recall after this case, sometimes if we went to like a park with a farm with entertaining works, or maybe circus performing works, we saw a lot of foreigners there. Most of them are white, Caucasians, but some of them are maybe from Africa. So maybe the Africans we were all treated like that. And for all the white people, maybe they were paid a little bit better, because they said in the farm they worked before, there were some Middle Asia from there are some people from Middle Central Asia, maybe Kazakhstan or Kyrgyzstan. they were paid a little bit better. They trained the horse.
So this is now modern
Yeah,
day
it is.
slavery that you've
Really.
uncovered, that you're seeing, and it different uh
Yeah,
people
correct.
running this, or is it one
Well, it's
company?
tricky. Sorry, the one who recruit them is a agency for this kind of artworks or the performing works. So they put them here. So actually, they are the main person, but they put them under the names of the employer of some farms. So legally, it's the farm who's taking care of them and have to pay them. So that's why in when they were working in a farm in Tainan, they were working there and they were sent to different places, dispatched to different farms, different works, and also the recycle company. Yeah, it's this kind of modules.
Oh my
Yeah,
god, that's
yeah.
just tragic. It's tragic. So now, are you trying to get them back to Kenya? Like, what are you trying to do
Well, we
for the
already
two?
applied a special work permit for them because that's a law in Taiwan. If you're considered as a victim, the Ministry of Labor can grant you a special open work permit. So it means that you can do any legal works in Taiwan as long as it is legal. So now they are
Okay.
trying to get a job, and they will stay because the court will do the case. So they should help the court to finish the case. Actually, they don't have the obligation, but of course, the Taiwanese government will hope they can stay, and they can also get a job. So it's also better for them. So we will try to help them to find a job so they can work at the same time, waiting for the law the court process. We hope the court can give back the
Oh,
justice they should have.
wow. You're doing good work there. Are there other workers' rights advocate organizations like you
Yeah, there are some quite a few there.
there?
There are around 15 shelters. Some run by the church or church organizations. Some run by labor organizations like us. There are some, yes, like maybe 10 to 15 of them. But not every one of them are so labor oriented. So a few of them are very sorry. A few of them are very vocal, like TIWA, Taiwan International
Hmm.
Workers Association, and a few other centers under the church. They're also vocal. So there are some. So yeah, many migrants they seek the help from these centers first before they complain to the government. And some of them also run a shelter.
What can people around the world do to help in your work?
Several things. I think for Americans especially, I think you can encourage your government. Please insist to put the forced labor regulation, okay, in the trade talk, the trade initiative. They don't call it trade agreement because of China. They call it trade initiative. Anyway, that's almost the same thing.
Hmm.
It insists to maintain the forced labor thing and make it more I mean, make it workable, and it's better.
Right.
There is a grievance mechanism, so anyone in Taiwan can complain to the system. So the U.S. government or the central government can have a say to monitor to check if there is a violation on forced labor, and if there is a
Right.
forced labor, we really point out, try to avoid to buy the product from that brand to give them more pressure and well yeah,
Hmm.
and to spread our information to let more people know because we know that the Taiwan government is very good on propaganda sometimes, but we don't say that's all fake. We do have some democratic achievements, but at the same time the situation of the migrant workers is really not good. Okay, many of them are really in the forced labor condition. We need to let more people know and to give more pressure to our government so they have to do some change.
Right.
And of course if you have some spare resources, um, a donation would be good to help us this kind of
Hmm.
centers to run. Yeah.
Great. How can the public find Serve the People Association of Taiwan? How can we find and give and, help?
Well, we have a website and we have our channel on Facebook and some other social media. But we have the donation program there, but it's mostly in Chinese. We will try to develop at least some English channels, so the international friends and allies and comrades can also support us. Yeah, we will try to update something there.
Okay, great. Thank you. What is your Facebook name for the organization? Where can people find you?
Well, there are several. Okay, there is an English one. It's SPA Shelter. So the people's count stand for SPA. So SPA Shelter. That's one of the English surface. We have some other Chinese ones, but
Okay.
for foreigners, it's not easy to understand. And yeah, and our website
Okay.
is spa.org.tw. We have some English part on it too.
Well, thank you so much for making time today.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm intrigued. I'm saddened. I have lots of
Mm,
emotions right now to know that we're on the
yeah.
same
Yeah.
planet and this type of thing is happening in
Right, right.
2024.
Well, yeah, it's really sad because, well, actually, well, maybe a few words that, well, of 10 years ago, but I'm still optimistic. 10 years ago, when we started the work on the migrant workers, I didn't see any positive hope from the world how to change the system, how to how to because most of the migrant workers they pay so much to come here and also in other countries. There's no mechanism at all before, but over the 10 years, there were some. So the ILO already made very, very clear statement, uh, yeah, even though there is no convention yet. And IOM, the International Organization for Migration, they also have very clear statement and stance on the migrant workers. So, and also even the business group like RBA, the Responsible Business Alliance, they have their own code of conduct. So they already regulate their
Right.
members that in all their supply chain, they cannot have any fees from the workers. So if they were the companies, they have to refund. The whole system is not
Mhm.
ideal yet, but there are some hope, and there are more and more government and mechanisms and laws. They are concerning about this issue, and they are trying to regulate to stop the forced labor and modern slavery. I do hope in the recent years we can see some big change. So in my life, we have the chance to see a better future for the migrant workers. Let's work together to make it faster.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. And everyone who works for Serve the People
Thank you very much.
Association.
All right.
All
Yes.
right. Thank you. So Lennon Ying-Dah Wong is here with us remote from Taiwan today. Thank you so much for joining Workers Rock episode
My
15.
pleasure. Thank you very much.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, Emery.
That concludes this episode of Workers Rock. Thank you for listening.